You're watching West Hartford Community Television.
You're watching West Hartford Community Television.
You're watching West Hartford Community Television.
For the community, by the community.
Hi everybody, it's Jeff Grandy talking to you. Welcome to Journeys, and I want to thank everybody for the emails and the phone calls and the feedback we got from our first show. It was very, very, very enlightening and heartening to get that. My name is Jeff Grandy, and I was born and raised in West Hartford. Went to Hall High. For those of you who don't know anything about me, I went to University of Georgia and some other schools, and I wound up teaching in middle school and high school in Hartford for 33 years. And I'm back here in my old stomping grounds, and as everybody's life is a journey. We all have a story to tell, and that's what my show is about, Journeys. If you have a story that you want to share, call up the TV station, email us. It's on the it'll be on the credits, and we'd love to hear from you if you'd like to share your journey. We all have a story to tell, and we'd love to hear from you if you'd like to. Tonight we have a guest, old West Hartford resident, Dan Berman. Dan, want to welcome you.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Bring us all the way back to the beginning. When were you born?
1931.
In West Hartford?
Well, actually, I was born on Nile Street, which is a hospital that no longer exists, in Hartford. But then I lived in West Hartford all my life, except going to college. I was away a couple years at college, and then when I was in the service, I was again away for 2 years.
So where were you? What part of West Hartford? Where were you?
Well, actually, I grew up on Penn Drive.
Penn Drive. So you went to what elementary school?
Morley.
And who was your kindergarten teacher?
Miss Wright. She was very good.
That's amazing.
I always remember her.
My kindergarten teacher was Miss Wright, and people who were in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, she must have taught there for 50 years.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because everybody had Miss Wright for kindergarten.
She was top notch.
Yeah, she was good. And then where'd you go after that?
Alfred Plant Jr. for 3 years. That was a junior high school.
Yeah.
And then I went to the next 3 years to Hall High, the old Hall High.
Yeah.
Which is actually the building we're in now.
Right, right. Well, what was it like? Growing up in the 30s during the Depression in West Hartford?
Well, it was. I used to be told about the bread lines. Today they have soup kitchens, but back then it was bread lines that went that actually circled buildings, and it was very tough for a lot of people. Fortunately, my father was he was a provider, so we were able to get our 3 squares a day. But I remember very distinctly in the 30s, the hurricane of 1938. I was a student at Morley, and I was walking home. They didn't realize that it was a hurricane. They knew it was a storm out in the sea, but they never expected to make a sharp turn, and went over Long Island and took a direct hit into Connecticut. And I remember the damage from that. It must have been a category 1 or 2. I don't think there was too much structural damage. There was flooding, but the trees, practically every yard in our town and in Hartford and surrounding areas was either blown over completely or branches were just hanging. And when these trees went over, I remember I went down to Oxford Street, Hartford, where my grandfather was living, and I saw actually tree after tree after tree just blown over, and all the sidewalks were lifted right up by the roots. That hurricane I will remember for a long time.
Well, you used to probably one of your boyhood playing places like mine was at Trout Brook. You were near Trout Brook when you were a
Not
little
too
boy.
far, not too far, a few blocks. Yes, I used to get down to Trout Brook because I was a turtle lover. I thought someday I was hoping to catch a turtle, but I was not successful. And they always seemed to get away. But there was a good number of turtles in that brook. I might have been a few snappers, or sun turtles, box turtles, but as a kid I really loved turtles, but I never was able to catch one. Although I did, back in those days, you were able to buy a small little, I don't know what they call it, turtles in stores, and I used to have my turtles in the house in a turtle bowl.
Well, what was Trout Brook like the day after the hurricane, 38?
Well, of course, there was not as much development. There was a lot of land. So the brook itself, I don't think was that much of a factor that I can recall. Of course, it overflowed its banks, but back then it was all woods, so it was not too much of a factor. The streets got flooded, but that's because the sewers got blocked up from all the debris, and so the streets did get flooded. And it was something to see. It was something to see.
Wow. Okay, so you went to Morley and Plant and Hall.
Yes.
And how was school? Just the school aspect, the academic aspect. How was that for you?
I was not a good student.
Why? What happened?
Well, I had a reading problem. I used to read, but I couldn't really comprehend what I was reading. And today I know what the problem is. But back then I had no idea, so that kind of held me back from my studies, and I had a tough time, I could tell you, making those grades and going, being passed from year to year into the next grade. But then I realized after maybe I was in, well, actually high school, maybe a little bit after, I knew what the condition was. I think you know the name.
Yeah, was probably today it would be called dyslexia?
Exactly. And I still have it today. But I'm an avid reader. I know what the problem is. I don't care about it now. It doesn't bother me. But I am an avid reader, and I just, whenever I have the time, I love to read. Even with this situation, because I know even today sometimes I can read some sentences, and I say to myself, that doesn't make sense. And then I reread it, and I said, well, naturally, because you didn't have the right words.
So you've really learned to deal with it.
I learned to accept it,
through
and struggled through it, because I had a hard time in grammar school. Junior high was not too easy. Hall High was a little better, but it was also a struggle. But when I entered Hall, that was one thing. I loved football, and I was determined to make that team. But I failed in history, American history, and I was afraid I was going to be thrown off the team. So I knew what the problem, I just couldn't comprehend everything. So I literally, practically just memorized that book, the history book. I remember the teacher's name, Mr. Spencer. He was very good. Well, I went from an F to a C, and I stayed on the football team.
What position?
Second string fullback, 2 years, junior and senior years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did that give you? Did that experience give you more? Make you feel a little bit more
absolutely
confident in yourself?
Absolutely.
Socially. And
Yes, I was more or less. You almost say I was an introvert because of the reading problem, and everybody else was very outgoing, and I just listened. I just kept on listening. But then when I became a football player. That changed my life. That was one aspect that changed my life, because then people came up to me and congratulated me for this or doing that out in the field, and I got a lot of self-respect, and that really changed my whole outlook in life. That was one of the aspects. But I also want to mention a very good book. A very good book that I read in high school by Reverend Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Positive Thinking. And frankly, that book also changed my whole life. It was a terrific book. They should assign that to everyone in high school. That was a wonderful book.
So a lot of our everybody has certain challenges and obstacles in life.
Yes.
But it's our attitude toward that
Makes a
positive
big difference.
that can make a
Very
being
big
defeated
difference.
by it or surmounting it.
Yep, and it really took me out of my shell in a sense, and my whole outlook on life completely changed. In fact, I became a salesman because I was outgoing. And I was a pretty good salesman too. I did pretty well.
Well, let's back up just a second.
Yeah.
Let's back up to the boyhood days. Trout Brook was one place. How about West Hartford Center? What was that like?
that was all retailing. Well, not like today. Today it's all restaurants. Back then it was all retailing, and we had some good stores and a few good restaurants too. I remember the Maple Hill restaurant. I thought they had the best filet of sole in town. And then, and also they had the movie theater.
The Central Movie Theater.
The Central Theater. I went to the movies back in the 30s, 40s for 10 cents, Sunday afternoon, 10 cents matinee. And they offered previews, they offered news clips, and they had 2 movies. Then when it went up to 11 cents, I thought that was terrible. But we accepted it, and I just kept on going. But I spent a lot of time in the Central Theater, especially on weekends. But back then, you're talking about the 30s, 40s, oh, they had Maxwell Drug, they had Cottonhoff Drugstore, William Powers Clothing Store, they had the Maple Hill Restaurant that I mentioned. Oh, they also had the West Hartford Diner, which today is Triva. But back then it was the West Hartford Diner, then it became Edelweiss. So I saw a lot of changes. Today where their Farmington Bank is, near the corner of Farmington Avenue, we had the South Seas Restaurant. That was Chinese food, that was excellent. They had the Hartford Federal Savings Bank, which no longer exists, that was there. And it was a thriving center.
How about LaSalle Road, the bowling alleys?
Oh yeah, bowling alley under the, which is now Starbucks. There was a bowling alley down there, and I remember bowling there. And there was another bowling alley further up Farmington Avenue at 998 Farmington Ave. They had a bowling alley in the lower level. I was told, although I don't remember, I was told before the bowling alley it was a shooting gallery.
Oh.
And it was an exciting time in the. Well, after the war was a big factor. If I may touch a little bit on the war days, the 40s, we had gas rationing. They had the ABC stickers. A was for everyday use, B was for service people, and C were for doctors. Doctors back then made house calls, and so you were limited on the amount of gas you could buy. Meat was scarce, sugar was scarce. Shoes were scarce. You had to resole. Your shoes wore out, heels wore out. You just had them resoled and new heels put on. And I remember one thing, although I don't see anything mentioned in West Hartford, at the corner of Farnham, and this is during the war days, and Fern Street, we had an anti-aircraft battery. And that's because East Hartford had, well, back then they called it Pratt & Whitney. Today they call it United Aircraft. And the searchlights in different areas of town were crisscrossing the sky looking for enemy planes because we were vulnerable at the very beginning of the war. And I remember they would pick up an American aircraft and they would kind of cross, the searchlights crossed each other and they'd follow that aircraft for a few miles. And I remember I talked to the guys down there. It was in the winter time because they had the potbelly stoves, and it was very interesting. I don't know how long they were there, but there was an anti-aircraft battery there. Oh, also we had air raid drills. We had a lot of air raid drills, and when they started, the lights went out. Street lights, every light went out. If not, you got to knock on the door from the wardens, the air raid wardens that walk around the streets. And excuse me, another thing I remember is every Saturday morning, 11 o'clock sharp, they would have those sirens ringing. That was a kind of make sure they were operating properly, but those sirens would just wail and whale. I remember that we had that for maybe a year or two.
And this is all World War II.
World War II.
Well, what happened? You were.
Well, I was too
you were
young
in
to
Korea.
serve.
Were you in Korea?
Well, yes, I'm a Korean veteran. I was there for 15 months.
You were in Korea
For 15 months.
In the Army?
In Korea, I was in Army.
What kind of action did you see there?
Well, I was with the 630th, 3rd Army, 630th Auto Ammo. It was 1st Army, 630 Auto Ammo. Our job was to supply the 1st Marine Division. I covered the whole country of South Korea, all the way from Busan, which was the coast, all the way up to the 38th parallel. I slept on the 38th parallel, and it was tough duty, but I survived it. But I do want to mention one thing about, another thing. I came back, fortunately, in good health and with no after effects. But I was awarded the Commendation Ribbon with Medal Pendant for meritorious service, and I came home. I was awarded that when I was a corporal, and I came home as a master sergeant. But I want to touch a little bit about Korea. It was not easy, and I remember one very cold December day. I was just getting off guard duty. It was so cold you could see the steam coming out of your mouth, and you know, I felt myself slipping a little bit mentally. So I stood on that hilltop overlooking the rice paddies, and I just prayed. I said, God, I don't think I can continue this. Well, to my surprise, as I was praying, and it was a cold day, a very warm surge went through my body. I couldn't believe it. I said, my prayer was answered. Because of that, I completed another year of duty in Korea with a little different attitude, but a little more with the fact that I knew I was going to come out of this okay. But that prayer really, I'm a spiritualist, by the way, that prayer really solidified my faith in God.
What do you think happened?
Well,
when that warm surge, what do you think that was?
Well, I don't know. The warm surge, that was God's answer. As I say, it was very cold that day, and I had these Parker uniform on, or jackets, hoods. I was bundled up, but that warm surge just went through my complete body, and I was stunned. But then I knew that my prayer was answered.
That had to have been a powerful.
My power, you know, to be able to come through this without, if possible, without injury and with my mind intact.
A powerful experience.
That was. I never forgot that either.
Right. Wow.
And that's why today I'm a spiritualist, and I do have a lot of faith in the Lord. Well, one thing, the Lord is our partner. If you take Him in, willing to accept it, He's your partner for life. I'm not too religious, because customs are not that, they don't mean too much to me, but the faith in the Lord is extremely important to me. In fact, I say the Lord's Prayer almost every morning now. I did for quite a while.
Wow. So you're there for a year and
15 months.
15 months. You came back.
Then when I came back, I had 2 years of college, 2.5 years of college, and when I was drafted, I came back and I said, oh, I want to get my degree, so I went back and I took 2 more years of college, summers and nights and days at the University of Hartford. And I got my degree, and I knew what I wanted to do, so I got my in real estate, they call that real estate certificate, because I took extra courses at night. And even though I had my reading problem, I didn't care. I said, I'm going to do this, and I just continued on for 2 solid years, days and nights and summers. I took summer schools, because I wanted to graduate in 2 years. So I just kept right on doing it, and I did graduate.
And now you're back. You're a grown-up man. You're back in West Hartford.
Oh, I've been living here all my life. I got married. I lived in Hartford for about 2 months when I first got married, and I bought a house on Montclair Drive. In fact, speaking of Trout Brook, the house on Montclair Drive, floods, I'm sure many people remember the floods of '55. I didn't own the house at that time, but Trout Brook went right through the living room. Wow. Right through the living room. I bought the house 5 years later. I got a good deal on it because people still remember, oh, that house and all the houses on Montclair were flooded. Well, that didn't bother me because I was also much into nature. The brook was in my backyard, and that was one of the selling points for me. And in fact, I still live there.
How many kids do you have?
Two great children. They're both very, very wonderful children. One of my daughter's in West Hartford. My son's in Virginia. I have 7 grandchildren.
Wow, 7 grandchildren.
Yeah.
And your wife, she passed.
My dear wife passed away, in fact, this month, 21 years ago. And I never remarried. In fact, my wife was talking to my sister-in-law about a month before she passed, and I heard her say to my sister-in-law, I hope Dan remarries. But I never did. I stayed single.
Oh. Well, with all of your life, such a journey, ups and downs, and is there anything that you can, with the dyslexia and with the chorea, and so many other obstacles, what's the hardest thing that you've ever faced?
I think the most frustrating part of my life was going through grammar school because of my reading problem. Grammar school, junior high school. Of course, being in Korea was a tough life too, but that was more of a physical toughness.
Right.
And I took that pretty well. Life is not a bowl of cherries. I had a lot of ups and downs. I had a lot of very good times. And but every day comes along, and at my age, every day is a blessing. And knock on wood, I'm in pretty darn good health. Well, I do take care of myself. I'll put it that way, also. But
I know. I see you eat your. I see you every week. If you want to run into Dan, go to Whole Foods by Blueback Square. He's there almost every night, and I see you. You all got your soup and your salad, all the fresh vegetables and fresh fruit.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm very careful what I eat. Absolutely.
Wow. Now, I can't help but notice, to diverge a little bit. Mm-hmm. What do you have? What is that, Dan?
Oh, this. Well, actually, this is the Metropolitan News. It says West Hartford, Thursday, July 11th, 1946.
1946. Can we get a close-up of that?
And in the back of it, of course, with the war days.
Can you hold that up? So,
sure.
Camera, can we get a close-up?
Yeah.
Zero in on that. That's very small printing, but turn it over so I can see the back of it.
It says, we, the West Hartford merchants of West Hartford, pledge to hold the line on prices and do all in our power to stop runaway inflation. Remember, we had the war days. Everybody was working. There was no job security. If you wanted to work, you worked. And you couldn't spend that much money because items were scarce. You couldn't buy a car. All the manufacturing were making tanks and armament. And so people were just making money. And because of that, we had the OPA, which is the Office of Price, I think it was Association, to try to keep prices down. But in the back, I'll show it's a larger print. And this is, before I do, I want to mention some of the merchants in West Hartford. They're not there now. Burnham's, that was a grocery store. Sion's Furniture, Central Delicatessen, Colonial Hardware, Doran's Flowers, Elmwood Hardware, the Garden Center, Intertown Motors, Kingswood Market, that's down by Ardmore Road and Farmington Avenue. That's still, the building's still there.
That's a Japanese place now.
Now, yes, and a salon. And Kroner's Bakery, Murray, that was a plumbing place. Oh, Foes, they just sold out about 2 years ago. That's on Farmington Avenue. Powers, that was a great men's shop. Park Road Department Store, Sage Allen. That's where there's a restaurant there now, Grant's Restaurant. That was a Sage Allen building. The Shoebox, Scandarian. That was, he was a rug guy. He used to install carpeting. Viking Bakery. That was the merchant, some of the merchants that were in West Hartford and Elmwood back in those days. And they were, living back in those days, you know, today, it's a little more stressful. In a way, I feel sorry for, you know, the people growing up today, the younger generation. Excuse me, they don't know. Of course, they don't know what it was like in the 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Life was a lot less stressful. There was no television. We didn't have a television in our house until I think the late 50s, possibly early 60s. There was no internet. There was no computers. Everything was done by hand. The pace of living was a lot slower. And I think today, we didn't have a drug problem. Oh, one thing we did, I wanted to mention, one thing that was very fearful when I was growing up in the 30s, 40s, polio. There was an outbreak of polio. It seemed every August there was an outbreak of polio. Yeah. And before the Salk vaccine came along. And, you know, our former president, FDR, he had polio, and that's why he ended up in a wheelchair. That was a very fearful period of time in my experience. I was always concerned that I just hope I didn't get polio because, you know, after someone had polio, you see them walking around with braces on their legs. Some people ended up with what they call an iron lung to help them breathe. That was not a fun picture back then. But the Salk vaccine came along and pretty well it wiped out polio. Thank goodness. So that from that standpoint it was a little stressful.
Well, Dan, it's been a long road.
It certainly has. I hope it continues.
The long and winding road, as they say.
Yes.
Do you look as you look back over your shoulder, back down the road? Any regrets?
No, you know, I thought of that quite a bit.
If you
I was
change
wondering
anything?
if I had to live all over again, what changes would I make in my life? You know, if I was born with the same capacity, I don't think I would make too many adjustments or changes. I love I'm still working. I love what I do. I don't think, no, maybe a few minor things here and there, but nothing major. I don't consider myself that I made any major errors. Although, you know, as I said before, life is not a bowl of cherries. It's a challenge.
Well,
every day is a challenge.
A lot of us, I think, would probably like to have a do-over, but it sounds like you know you've done the best you can.
Oh, absolutely.
And you've done a very good job, courageously. And I want to thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. And as I said, if you have a story that you'd like to share, you'd like to come in and tell your story, we would love to hear it. Call WHC TV, email us or give us a call, and we'd love to hear from you. And thanks again for joining us, and we will see you next time.